I don't know if you can see it here, but there's a mark. Now I don't know how I did that, but I didn't notice it before I put the stain on. And every time I look at this clock, I see this mark. And I'm going to just see if possibly I can't just sort of sand that out somehow. I'm going to start out at 220, then 320, and then polish it up with 600. Now my little brush is still loaded here with stain, so I'm going to take advantage of that. Try and keep the sawdust down. And I don't want to overdo it and have an indentation either. Now it's getting to the place now where I can just barely see it. It's right there. Okay, I think that's it for the 220. Okay, now I'll just polish it up with the 600. Well, I can't even see where it was. So I guess I got it.
Okay, now I can really get started with the door.
Now this piece of plexiglass, it's already been cut once. And I want to take advantage of that, and it looks like it's going to work out pretty good. It's just a coincidence. I can cut the glass for the door out of this right here. This is already pretty much the right height, so I'm not going to be wasting a whole lot. And then this section up here, I'll be able to use it for smaller clocks. Now my plan here is to cut it just a little bit bigger than what I actually need.
Now if there's one thing I hate, it's cutting an awkward piece of work like that, especially when the fence is way over to the right. You know, it's quite easy that the piece could catch on the fence a little bit and then twist on the blade, and then it's going to kick on you, or worse.
Okay, now I'll just use the jigsaw to cut this little corner out here. Now you'll notice I'm using these magnets here to hold everything in place so that when I cut this out, it doesn't all of a sudden snap the corner off or something. But I should tell you, these magnets do not hold real well if they're not tight up against the cast iron. The further they are away from the cast iron, the less they hold down. I can actually peel it off if I wanted to. There, I'm through. Now the door is only going to have oak rails on each side, and there'll be nothing on the top or the bottom. So I've already run this through the table saw, and as you'll be able to see, the plexiglass is just slightly thinner than that groove. So there's just enough room for the glue. Anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about here. Now here's something that some of you probably already noticed, and that is that this little oak basil is slightly proud of this part of the frame here. So that means that I have to make sure that the groove that I make in the rail here is going to be far enough up this way that the plexiglass isn't going to be bumping against this. And I think probably if I make it right down the middle, it'll be just about right. It'll give probably 1/8 of an inch clearance, and that's all I need. I had planned on having this as far forward as possible, and I didn't want to have it recessed into the case. I could have had it go further in, half an inch or more, but I wanted it out as far as possible, and it is. Now another thing I'd like to point out, you notice how these two sort of match if they're like this, but they don't match like this. So I'm going to take advantage of that. And I'll make sure that I've got the groove on this one here and on this one here, and then this will be facing out. Now the next thing I want to do is cut this down, probably about not even 1/4 of an inch, so that it's a nice tight fit between here and here. And then I'll slowly start sizing it this way so that these pieces will just be the right distance to match up with this piece and this piece. Makes sense to me anyway. Now this is going to be the surface that is on the outside. This is the surface that's going to be facing you when you're looking at the clock. And I just want to round these over a little bit. And so what I've done is I've marked the edges that I want to round over so that I don't accidentally round over the wrong side. Okay, all three pieces now are cut to a nice snug fit. Not so snug that you can't get it out, but just nice and tight. Now I think if I'm smart, I'll take this protective plastic off now. And that way if there's anything wrong with this glass, I'll be able to cut a new piece. But once it's glued into the pieces of oak, well, it'll be too late to cut a new piece. I'll have to cut new pieces of oak as well. And I'm just going to very carefully ease over these sharp edges here with 320 grit sandpaper. Well, this looks pretty good. I'm happy with this one. Just have to be careful I don't scratch it myself. I've got a little bit of a dilemma going on. I can't decide what kind of glue to use to glue these pieces onto the glass. And I'm beginning to think maybe I'm not going to use glue at all. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill little tiny holes about halfway through, up from the bottom, through the plexiglass, and then cut little pins from these finishing nails. And well, I'm going to try that. And I'll have to be very careful that I make sure that the holes that I drill are slightly larger than this little nail. Otherwise, when I force the nail through, it's going to crack the plexiglass. Now here again you can see where these little magnets can really come in handy. This will act as a fence. So when I'm sliding the piece back and forth, it'll keep it in the right place. And I won't accidentally drill a hole too much this way or too much that way. And once again, lock it in place. And double check. Now I'm thinking the spacing of the holes, probably 2 inches would be about right. 2 inches if you're an old Canadian like me, or an American, and that'd be about 30 millimeters for the rest of the world. Now I just want to check and make sure that the glass hasn't slid in that channel there, in that groove. You know the old saying, check twice, drill once. Well, that's just about perfect. Now what I need is a bunch of little pieces this size. I was going to make a fancy little jig so that I got them all exactly the same, but I think I'm just going to eyeball it here. It'll be close enough. Now when I was putting these little pins in place, I noticed that some of them just fell into the hole. And that means if they fall in, they'll also fall out. So I'm probably going to have to put a little dab of glue. I think I'm going to try CA glue, just a little drop of CA glue, and see how that works. Okay, now easy does it. Yeah, that's soaked in. Maybe I should give it one more. Yeah, that went in too. Well, I'll bet you've been wondering, if I'm not going to use hinges on this door, how am I going to hold it on? Well, magnets. Remember a couple of videos back I said I wasn't going to take the plastic off until the last possible moment? Well, now's the last possible moment. Well, it's not going to look a whole lot different than that, no matter what I do to it. Probably in a couple of months after this stain has set, I'll go over it with a wax. But I want to let this stain completely dry. The spindles I won't touch. I already waxed them when they were on the lathe. There's a few things I would do differently if I was to do it over again. For instance, I probably would not have used CA glue, because I noticed that it did give me a bit of a problem with the gas coming off the glue. It did sort of get light marks on the edge of the plexiglass. I was able to get that off though, however. Anyway, now there may have been people that wondered, what is the best that this movement can sound? Well, I can't give you that unless I was able to plug it right into the amplifier. But, and I suppose I could have done that, disconnected the speaker, but I'm going to just give you an idea of what's the best it can sound. And this is it. Well, what do you think? You know, this mantel clock project just never ends. I thought I was done, but I just realized I have to put on the little feet. I was thinking of making little oak feet, but that would have made it, you know, a whole lot taller, and it's already too tall as it is. Now these little pieces of felt, they actually stick on amazingly well. Okay, now it's done. Well, this clock series has finally come to an end. And to those of you who watched most of the episodes, or even some of the episodes, thanks for watching. And also thanks for those nice comments that I was getting. Anyway, I hope you're going to watch for The Clock Mantel, Part 1.